I think I'm actually going to bundle two topics together for the next topic. So, number one is a news story, pretty simple. Bitcoin breaks through 52,000 USD. And I think it almost touched 53K, but it's at like 52,900, the highest price I've personally seen. But I'm sure somebody somewhere probably paid 52K for Bitcoin at some point. But yeah, anyways, that's the first story. And the second story regarding Bitcoin is HUD 8. So HUD 8 has announced a leadership transition. So I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'll post kind of a picture of the article for you guys to see in post. But you guys have access to the docket, so you guys can read along with me. But essentially, the gist of what it says is that the new CEO who's going to succeed outgoing CEO, his name is Asher Ganut. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he was one of the co-founders of USBTC, which is the company that HUD 8 merged with. The outgoing chief executive officer, CEO, is Jamie Leverton, who's led HUD 8 for as long as I can remember and for as long as I've been in the stock. This kind of caught me off guard, and I'm wondering what you guys think of it. But before we jump right into it, let me just kind of give you a little bit of a background around what this new CEO has in plan for HUD 8. And I'm not sure if I like it, to be honest. So let's go through it. So the new HUD 8 CEO wants to make hard decisions and nix inefficiencies. So basically, HUD 8 is saying that it's pursuing a different path than its competitors, who are mainly focused on increasing their exahash capacity. So for those of you who don't know Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, it relies on a metric called exahash, which is how much compute power that you're able to put forth. So I believe HUD 8 is right now sitting at around 7.2 exahash per second. But a lot of other Bitcoin miners have announced their plans to increase exahash count dramatically by the end of the year. And the more exahash you have, the more Bitcoin you can mine, and the more competitive you are. And if everybody else increases, it's also a competitive game. So if everyone else increases and you don't increase, then you're going to see your amount of Bitcoin mined go down because there's only so much Bitcoin that's being released, right? So it's algorithmic. But anyways, Bitcoin miner HUD 8, this new CEO is promising to take it into a different direction and not focus as much on exahash growth. They haven't announced the purchase of new machines like others, and they haven't announced any additional plans to expand that. They're instead going to focus on being a low-cost operator of their current machines, and they're also going to focus on their I think cloud computing hosting. So for those of you who don't know, they also have a side of their business where they're hosting stuff for AI, and they're hosting just compute like data centers, and they're also hosting mining for other companies. So other companies can subcontract their mining operations to HUD 8. So HUD 8 can just provide the machines and the facilities, but the Bitcoin, the proceeds will go to different companies, and HUD 8 just makes money off of the facilities and the hosting of the machines. So basically, it sounds like this new CEO is trying to really diversify the business and focus less on Bitcoin mining and focus more on other aspects. This kind of, not to trash this decision, but as I said, I really don't like this decision. And as a result, let me just make it very clear. I was a shareholder of HUD 8, and as of today, I've completely exited 100% of my position in HUD 8. Now, this is not financial advice. Don't just do something because I did it. I'm just telling you what I did. Basically, the reason, if it's not already clear, is that I entered in HUD 8 with the assumption that it's going to be a Bitcoin miner. So if you're not going to be a Bitcoin miner anymore, there's no reason for me to stay in, because there's plenty of companies that I could choose that does AI stuff, that does data center hosting and all that stuff. that I could be putting my money into. And also, it's just I don't have any confidence in this new CEO. So when that short report came out, if you guys recall, um, a lot of people were bashing on Hut 8, and I was kind of defending them with the premise that a lot of the management that's in charge of Hut 8 it came from old Hut 8 and it didn't come from USBTC, and the majority of the criticism around the new Hut 8 was because of USBTC. How like J Capital was saying that USBTC was being shady and the co-founders of USBTC were doing shady things. Again, I'm not accusing them, and I'm not saying that those allegations are true. To be clear, they're allegations. But let's just say that Asher Ganut he's one of the co-founders of USBTC, and I don't feel 100% comfortable with him at the helm, even if there's a small chance that some of the things that was said in the short report could be real. So yeah, basically that's kind of my thoughts on it. But let me toss it back to you, Tristan, first, because I know you're, or at least you were also a shareholder of Hut 8, but have you exited your position, or what do you think of this report, Angel?
I'll say that I didn't I didn't exit completely, but I trimmed off the majority of my position in Hut, and I am expecting to sell the rest of it probably pre-halving. So I will be exiting the position shortly, the remaining position. So I definitely, upon reading this article, I had some pretty negative thoughts because for starters, I'll be honest. I looked at the merger documents for Hut 8 and for USBTC prior to the merger, and I could not understand why it was a merger of equals, because it seemed to me Hut 8 was pretty good and USBTC was kind of trash. And now we take the Hut 8 leadership, who from the merger documents I could see was running a pretty good company, and we replace it with the leadership from the company that I looked at the merger docs and said, this is kind of trash. I wouldn't buy, if this was public, I wouldn't buy this stock. And you take the leadership from Hut 8 and you replace it with the leadership from USBTC. I go, I don't want to be in this anymore. This is become a lot more risky than it was before, because I had confidence that the Hut 8 leadership knew what they were doing, whereas I don't feel the same confidence for the USBTC leadership, especially with the fact that short report, as Andy mentioned, was very critical of USBTC and basically mentioned nothing really of any consequence about the Hut 8 side of the merger. So, or at least in my opinion, of consequence, to be clear. So when I reading this and then taking that into account, I also read this information on the hard decisions that were being made, and the decision to move more into other areas, and I think specifically the fact that Asher made it clear that the intention is not necessarily to increase their capacity of Bitcoin mining and such. I think that basically makes the company really hard to justify as a Bitcoin miner play, because why am I buying a Bitcoin miner that isn't going to try and mine more Bitcoin? Like, I might as well buy something else, buy a different Bitcoin miner, which would be my conclusion would be to buy a different Bitcoin miner over this one. So because of the information that was shared and the decisions to proceed in this other avenue, I was basically like, this is not going to be I don't want this to be a major position that I need to be super concerned about, because of the fact that I don't think I trust the USBTC guys sufficiently to justify giving them the reins over a large portion of my portfolio. So it's definitely very disappointing from a Hut perspective, because I think that Hut had a lot of potential, and I think that there's been a path chosen that basically reduces my interest in the company wholeheartedly. So what can you do?
Yeah, and just to add to that, and even if the things that were said about the USBTC people in the short report, even if that was not real, the fact that you can't deny is from the merger documents, you can see that USBTC was not doing well. Like that's just undeniable, right? Like so, given that, even if the things that were said about the management were not true, just the fact that the management led USBTC to that point in the first place does not give me a lot of confidence. And now they're at the helm of this new company that was born out of the merger. And yeah, as you said, I just don't have a lot of confidence. And let me share you a story actually of something that I sort of paid attention to back in 2017. There was this company, and back then, by the way, I was not into Bitcoin. I was not into crypto at all. I just came across this article when I was, or not this article, this kind of story, this saga, when I was reading just news about the Bitcoin pump that was occurring in 2017. But, anyways, back in 2017, there was this company called Long Island Iced Tea. I think it was based out of like New York or something. This company that made iced teas, right? Like literally like the drink. So they bottled iced teas and they sold it at like convenience stores and grocery stores and whatnot. And one day, out of the blue, for seemingly no reason, with no warning whatsoever, the management of the company decides, forget iced tea, we're going to be a blockchain company. So they renamed the company to Long Blockchain Corp. And what exactly they did with blockchain, I have no idea. And they never explained what exactly they were doing with blockchain. They were just, we're going to be like a research company in blockchain and we're going to do blockchain stuff. And we're not going to do iced tea anymore because that's boring. And like, it's just unfathomable. But because it was during the peak hype cycle of crypto, the stock just absolutely skyrocketed. It was like $1 or $2, and it went. I think at one point it hit like $15. Yeah, I think you guys, without even knowing the full story, knows how this story ends. So this company no longer exists, and I think the founders at one point I read that they were being sued for fraud and being investigated by the SEC for orchestrating a pump and dump, essentially. So yeah, it did not turn out well for the founders or for the company or for any of the shareholders in the company. So after that, I think just judging from this example for Long Blockchain Corp, I'm very hesitant and very wary of management changes. And I'm very hesitant to trust people that have unproven track records or have, even bad track records, I would say, as it is the case with USBTC or with the USBTC people leading the new hut, right? So, yeah, for those reasons, I'm out. But yeah, let me pass it to you, Dom, because I know you bought a few shares of Hut, right? Like, does this make you concerned? Does this like or does it not make you concerned? Like, what are your thoughts?
Actually, yeah, no, it does make me a bit concerned. So first and foremost, like how Tristan was talking about the merger with, I think it's called USBTC. Like as Tristan would say, thumbs down. I honestly think that's pretty whack move there. Considering you guys were saying that Hut was the better mining company in comparison to the two, that probably wasn't the play. And then what Andy I think was saying too, how they're making a pivot with the company. The new CEO or whatever his name is trying to go more towards different areas like AI, stuff like that. That's kind of a hot take when the halving is happening. And then I think like pre-halving, according to what you guys have said, is like when a lot of Bitcoin's going to circulate and the prices might like rise and stuff. That's kind of a crazy thing to do. And then having so many different pivots could actually be the downfall of like Hut in itself. So maybe at some point I would sell, but since I recently bought, I might just hold on till 15 above, and then just before April, wherever the halving is gonna happen, I might consider a full you out. So let's see.
Yeah, I think just to jump in there on that front, I don't think that they'll have time to screw Hut in the short term, right? I think that in the long term, I think the company is going more downhill, but I think in the short term, they're going to get the same ish pump from the Bitcoin price rise leading up to the halving that the other ones do. I just think that, of the Bitcoin miners, if I'm going to get stuck in any of them holding a large number of shares that have depreciated aggressively, Hut is not the one you would want to have it in, because they're not going to be the one that's going to recover to the same rate that another company that is invested heavily into additional miners and such will, because of and maybe on that front they'll be more insulated because they'll be more diversified. But at the same time, I don't trust that they're not going to take this down a path that is going to be a long-term problem for investors. So I think that once I exit this company and once I exit this position, Hut will not be back on my portfolio. And to be clear, I owned Hut prior to the merger. I looked at the merger docs and I dumped Hut because of the merger talks for USBTC. The USBTC balance sheet was so dog shit. It was terrible. So because of that, I only rebought when they had dropped when they had dropped because of the post ETF drop. Because at that point, USBTC's addition was basically being valued as non-existent. So at that point, the valuation seemed a little bit better. But I think when I was looking at the pre-merger documentation, Hut was like here, USBTC was here, and it was just not a good deal.
Yeah, and to
True.
be clear, like I don't think that Hut will immediately tank and just go bankrupt, right? Because they still have around 9,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which is, one of the biggest Bitcoin balance sheets out of any publicly traded company in the world. So if Bitcoin does well in the short term, I expect Hut to do well as well. So there's no reason to panic and just sell out of all of it tomorrow. But as you said, Tristan, long term, I do have concerns, and to me, as from an investor standpoint, there's no reason why I should be in Hut versus other miners when other miners have announced their plans to drastically increase their hash rate and they're performing much better, right? Because I think Bitfarms was one of the examples, and I'm heavily in Bitfarms right now, but I like Bitfarms a lot better than Hut 8 because if you look at Bitfarms, they have currently less hash rate than Hut already, but they're mining more Bitcoin per month than Hut with less hash rate. And you say, how is this possible? Well, because they're more efficient, right? So they're using their hash rate in a more efficient manner. They're using their electricity in a more efficient manner. And also, Bitfarms has announced their plans to expand their operations. So they just purchased more land in Paraguay in order to build a new facility. And I think that they have like a goal of getting to 17 exahash by the end of this year. And they have a stretch goal of 21 exahash. So if they can get to 20, like the 20 exahash mark, then I think you'll see the price go up on Bitfarms by quite a bit. But again, not financial advice. This is just my opinion. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess we're all sort of in Bitfarms, so like we're probably gonna stick around for that one a bit longer than Hut here. But I just want to preface by saying that Hut 8's sort of like a FHSA play. I simply opened the FHSA. As you guys may or may not know, if you didn't open it last year, you're not credible for the 8K deposit room that you have last year and this year. So I had to open it last year just to get the total amounts of last year's room and this year's room. So for me, Hot 8's just simply a small FU play that I have. It's not like a huge amount of my portfolio, and I just want to experiment with it for a bit. I guess I will sell shortly and maybe put some money in Bitfarm. So only time will tell. We'll see. Not financial advice.
Yeah, don't sue me if Bitfarms goes bankrupt, Dom.
Well, I'm in it too. Like, we're all in our 20s, right? So why not? Heck, yeah, let's do it before we're too old. So
Yeah, I think Bitfarms does not financial advice, but I think Bitfarms does represent a significantly more appealing option with than Hut 8 post the merger, because I think they've made it clear where their intentions are, where they're planning to go, and I think that I am much more aligned with Bitfarms' view. And then at the same time, Bitfarms' balance sheet is looking very, very strong, whereas Huts is fine, but they have a lot of debt that they got from USBTC, and they do have their Bitcoin hodl, but they may start divesting from the Bitcoin hodl, because Asher did mention divest. So I think that there is a significant amount of risk that Hut moves out of the Bitcoin realm or reduces their Bitcoin realm. Whereas I think Bitfarms represents a company that is moving aggressively. And at the same time, like CleanSpark, for example, is another a more US centric company that's shown clear aggressive moves into the Bitcoin space, into increasing production, into growing rapidly. So I think even like something like CleanSpark is another example of a much, like, there are a lot of strong Bitcoin miners currently, and if your choice is between a strong one and a weak one, when they're all roughly valued similarly, I would definitely rather be in a strong one than a weak one. And I think Hut has done the unfortunate job of placing itself into the weaker category. So
Yeah, and one last comment before we move on. I just think that being a Hut 8 shareholder is kind of like being in an abusive relationship. It's kind of like, because the hits keep coming, right? It's like I never have these problems being in other Bitcoin miners. It's like if you're in Bitfarms, it's like, okay, we've increased our hash rate. They had this like loan with BlockFi, which is a company in the Bitcoin's crypto space that went bankrupt. So they had this loan, and they were able to pay it off with like less than half of the amount of money that they owed to BlockFi, because BlockFi is bankrupt and they needed the money. So they negotiated a discount on the loan. They bought like new machines, and then they're building all these new sites. And with Hut 8, it's like, oh, we're doing this merger. And they had this problem at North Bay, Ontario, with their like power management thing, where they had a dispute. So it's like, oh, we got into a lawsuit with one of our power providers. It's like, oh, our like Drumheller, Alberta facility is not doing that well, and it's partially offline. It's like, oh, we're doing this merger, and we're pivoting into AI. It's like, it's like being in a relationship where she's not like a horrible person, and she's like relatively attractive, but she like punches you for no reason from time to time, and pours a cup of bleach into your coffee maker from time to time. It's like, why are you there, right? It's like, when there's plenty of fish in the sea, I don't have to stay like, yeah, in this. And to be clear, this is not like the abusive relationship part is not something that's happening to me currently. This is a totally hypothetical analogy. But yeah, anyways, you guys get what I mean, right? Like, the analogy makes sense.
And I think it's also important to note that whenever Bitfarms does something that I may be a little bit like about, it's almost always followed by something that is very bullish. So for example, like they diluted in like February, or not February, the other way, November, and the stock price went down, and I was like, their track record's pretty good. They're probably going to be buying something with that money. And lo and behold, they bought stuff with that money. Whereas I think we haven't really had any the logic of the decisions isn't necessarily flowing the same way. Whereas like with Bitfarms, you can clearly see we need more money. We don't want to take on debt. We will issue more shares to buy more machines. More exahash. Very logical. Whereas the Hut, it's like, we need more machines. We're going to merge with another company that has a ton of debt. And then we're going to not become a Bitcoin mining company. We're going to just go somewhere else. Like it just like the logic doesn't quite flow the same way that the Bitfarms strategy has. And that makes you a little bit less comfortable, I think, or at least makes me a little bit less comfortable because I'm like, why? And also, if I'm going why at your current decisions, am I going to be going why at your future decisions too? So that makes me more nervous about them. Whereas with Bitfarms, like instead of going why at their decisions, I'm usually like, there's probably a good reason for your decision. And because their management has proven in the past that there has been a good reason for their decisions, you trust that there is a logical reason for those decisions. Whereas with Hut, the decisions haven't been quite the same.
Yeah, it's just a series of yellow/red flags from Hut, and like it's just the hits keep coming. But yeah,